I casually forwarded a promotional message from KFC offering me 50, then closed my phone for a midday rest. Upon waking, I was greeted by over 10 unread messages. As I opened my boyfriend's profile, I was inundated with his incredulous remarks. "You post this every Thursday. Is it truly necessary? Today you snag 50, tomorrow another 50. Can't you aspire for something greater? If you can't afford it, then don't eat." How utterly embarrassing. In that moment, I decided to end our relationship. Shortly after, he sent me a link titled Breakup AA Settlement System. It's a new initiative from the Civil Affairs Bureau. If we're to part ways, let's first settle our accounts and see just how much you've profited from me. I laughed and agreed, but when the day of reckoning arrived, he was in tears, pleading with me not to leave. As Chin Emo stepped through the door that evening, he forcefully dropped a bag of KFC on the foyer floor. The cold, greasy fried chicken rolled out, leaving an unsightly oil stain on my recently cleaned floor. I bent down to retrieve it, and he languidly remarked that I was in a foul mood earlier in the day, urging me not to be upset and suggesting I eat what was left rather than waste it. Without uttering a word, I tossed it directly into the trash bin. Chin Emo paused for a moment, then erupted in anger, questioning why I was upset when he had procured the meal for me. Could I not cease this childish behavior? I pulled out my phone and displayed a post from his intern, shared just an hour prior. "Thank you, Mr. Chin, for the KFC family bucket. Working overtime is no longer exhausting. Mua." Next to it was a half-visible hand adorned with a wedding ring, flashing a peace sign. She had the audacity to offer me her leftovers as if it were a gracious gift. "Chin Emo, do you genuinely believe I have a desire for KFC?" He was momentarily taken aback, but quickly softened his tone, claiming he was merely showing concern for the hard-working young lady, insinuating that I was overreacting. I refrained from engaging in a rebuttal and simply stated, "Chin Emo, let's break up." He abruptly lifted his head, incredulity etched across his face. "What did you say? Break up?" After a couple of seconds of stunned silence, a sardonic smile crept onto his lips. "Sure, go ahead and initiate your breakup settlement system. Let us head to the Civil Affairs Bureau and settle the score properly." I had intended to provide him with an easy way out, but with things escalating to this point, it was clear he was pushing me. Chin Emo seized my arm and dragged me outside. Just as we reached the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, a disheveled man stumbled out, waving his arms and shouting, "No splitting bills! No splitting bills! No splitting bills!" Chin Emo cast a glance at him, a smirk curling at the corners of his mouth. "Did you see that? He must have taken advantage before and is now panicking over the reckoning. Once this system is activated, it binds you for life. There's no stopping midway. Sun Yen. If you regret it, now is the time to say something soft." I ignored him, freeing my arm and striding directly into the bureau. Chin Emo lingered for a few seconds before catching up, gritting his teeth. "Fine, just wait until the settlement. I want to see you cry." After completing the breakup registration, he swiftly scanned the code to download the system, his fingers flying over the screen as if fearing I might change my mind and undercount his dues. "You two have registered for a breakup and will enter a cooling-off period of 15 days. During this time, all shared expenses will continue to be recorded," announced the staff as they handed over a manual. Chin Emo didn't even glance at it, disdainfully tossing it into the trash, exuding an air of arrogance. I carefully accepted the manual, folding it neatly and stowing it in my bag. Upon exiting the Civil Affairs Bureau, he strode away without looking back, only to turn and declare, "Sun Yen, from this day forth, I shall give you not a single cent and will not return home for dinner unless you beg me." I shook my head. It was unnecessary to think twice, for I knew he would soon regale his colleagues with tales of my supposed dependence on him, insinuating that I could not live without him. He might even drag that female intern along to meticulously calculate how much he had wasted on me over the years. 2. To be candid, I held little faith in this system. After all, as the daughter of the wealthiest man in Haicheng, I had seamlessly inherited the family business upon graduating from university, never having worked a single day in my life. My parents merely instructed me to feign poverty before marrying him, as a test of his character. Meanwhile, Chin Emo had thrived over the past few years, securing a position at a prominent tech company immediately after graduation and advancing to a managerial role within 3 years. Naturally, he bore the brunt of household expenses, including rent and utilities. Currently, his income exceeded 30,000, while my sporadic earnings from social media barely amounted to 1,000. As things stood, my income scarcely covered utility bills, leaving me uncertain of how much I owed him. Compelled by an inexplicable impulse, I opened the app to check the compensation amount, only to find the transaction history from last Thursday clearly marked as settling. After studying the manual for a while, I set my phone aside and prepared to wash some clothes. Shortly thereafter, Chin Emo returned, humming a tune and casting a glance at me before carelessly tossing a cold sushi container onto the coffee table. My colleague did a quick calculation for you. You owe me about 600,000 to 700,000. At that moment, 2 notifications pinged on my phone regarding payment deductions. Sun Yen, payment of 6,000 yuan required, covering 3 years of KFC expenses totaling 5,880 yuan. Chin Emo, payment for this KFC meal, 120 yuan. Almost simultaneously, Chin Mo's phone chimed with a notification. Upon opening it, a smug grin spread across his face. See? The system accounts for everything. 3 years of KFC every week adds up to exactly 5,008. And with today's meal, you owe me a total of 6,000. I was at a loss for words. Had I eaten that KFC? What? The system acknowledges the debt. And you still want to argue? Chin Emo crossed his arms, relishing my predicament as he declared, my colleagues mentioned that if you refuse to pay, the system has a penalty mechanism. The fines could double, so don't say I didn't warn you. I clenched my teeth, realizing that arguing at this moment was futile. Upon seeing the bill, Chin Mo's amusement was palpable. This was merely the beginning. He waved his phone, eyes gleaming with anticipation, noting that there were still 5 years of rent and utility bills to account for, as well as all the items I had purchased for you. Every single one would need to be meticulously calculated, and I would soon find myself in tears. Hearing him speak, I recalled the manual I had just perused. It explicitly stated that during the cooling-off period, the system merely calculated shared expenses, which was only the surface. If it could be proven that these amounts were not for mutual expenditures, Chin Emo would not only owe me money but would also have to compensate me tenfold. Just as I was about to remind him, Chin Emo abruptly interrupted, extending a payment code. Hurry and pay up. After I obediently transferred the 6,000 yuan, Chin Emo was finally satisfied, leaving me with a parting remark. Just wait for the next bill. Let's see how long you can hold out. I slumped onto the sofa, contemplating my next move against him when my phone vibrated unexpectedly. It was a message from Chen Mo's female intern. She sent me a photograph of him with his arm around her shoulders, both smiling intimately, the backdrop unmistakably that same KFC from the previous night. I raised an eyebrow and smiled. Evidence had arrived. 3. I promptly saved the photograph. Moments later, a message from Jiang Cici popped up. Sister Nyan, Manager Chin was with me for dinner yesterday, which is why he got home late. Please don't take it to heart. I stared at the screen, my fingers swiftly taking a screenshot to preserve the incriminating text. The clause regarding maliciously shifting expenses flashed through my mind, and I smirked, quickly responding, of course not. I don't mind at all. Seeing me so meek, Chin Emo became even more brazen. In the days that followed, he began frequently staying out late. And each time he spent money, it was calculated meticulously. For instance, after taking Jiang Cici out for lavish meals, he would toss me the remnants in greasy plastic bags, condescendingly stating, "This is for you, don't waste it." Additionally, he bought Jiang Cici a Dior bag but carelessly discarded the empty box on our coffee table, proclaiming, "The box is quite nice, consider it a gift." He sought to blur the lines of shared expenses, and the system indeed complied with his wishes. Expenses for a Western restaurant totaled 1,280 yuan, while purchases at a luxury goods store amounted to 89,000 yuan, both recorded as shared expenditures. The system incessantly pushed notifications for these bills, each annotated as shared expenses. On one occasion, he even presented a receipt for flowers he bought for Jiang Cici, insisting it be logged as a shared emotional expense, and astonishingly, the system temporarily accepted it. By the 12th day, the system generated a summary bill, indicating that I had been charged a staggering 500,000. I said nothing, simply paying the bill in silence. After receiving the transfer, Chin Emo promptly headed to a bar, undoubtedly to indulge in another night of revelry with Jiang Cici. That night, he returned home in the latter half of the night, clad in the season's limited edition fashion. With an air of superiority, he tossed a steak wrapped in aluminum foil towards me, splattering grease onto my tablet. You must have been unable to afford meat for quite some time, all in the name of repaying debts, he sneered, his tone dripping with disdain. Frowning, I wiped the grease off my tablet without looking up at him, suppressing the anger bubbling within me as I discreetly pressed the recording button on my phone, silently reiterating. Excellent, more evidence in hand. Noticing my continued silence, Chen Mo, feeling a bit embarrassed, left with a parting remark, fine. I shall see how long you can maintain your stubbornness. And stormed out. Later, he even took the initiative to call my father, tauntingly declaring that I was a liability. When my father received the call, he was so furious that he was gasping on the line, asking if I wanted him to deal with Chen Mo. But I stopped him. Dad, wait a little longer until the cooling-off period ends. I spoke calmly, my mind already plotting. With just 1 day left until the conclusion of the cooling-off period, a notification suddenly popped up on my screen. The preliminary settlement is about to conclude. Deep accounting will commence in 24 hours. Please visit the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow to claim the results and pay the fine in person. At that moment, Chen Mo was at a bar, wrapped around Jiang Cici, laughing heartily. Little did he know that there was to be a deep settlement. All right then. Let's wait for tomorrow and see how Sun Yan begs for mercy. Jiang Cici immediately clung to his arm, playfully asking Manager Chen, can I join you tomorrow? Of course. Once we get the money, right after the cooling-off period ends, I'll register our relationship. Let her regret it. Meanwhile, I sat on the sofa. Having already uploaded all the evidence I possessed to the system and pressed the Submit Evidence button, he remained oblivious that the deep settlement was the main event. The next morning, a chill swept through the air at the Civil Affairs Bureau as I reached the steps, only to be blocked by Jiang Cici. She affectionately clung to Chen Mo's arm, the sequins on her nails dazzling in the sunlight, her words laced with sharpness, Sister Nian, make sure you bring enough money today. Chen Mo snickered beside her, a mocking curve on his lips. Jiang Cici beamed with even more pride, suddenly pulling out a stack of cards depicting scantily clad women, forcefully shoving them into my hands. If you don't have enough, it's fine. I have loan ads here, low interest and quick to disburse, perfect for your emergency. I raised my hand and, with a sharp motion, scattered the cards across the ground. Don't touch me, you're filthy. I glared into her eyes. My voice as cold as ice. How dare you hit Cici? Chen Mo's tone abruptly escalated. Incensed, he shoved me hard. I stumbled back a step. And he immediately shielded Jiang Cici in his embrace, glaring at me with wide eyes. Sun Yan, you're pushing it. After the settlement, let us see how arrogant you remain. Amidst our quarrel, a group of people suddenly swarmed from the street corner, Chen Mo's colleagues. They held colorful balloons and a bright red banner that read, celebrating Manager Chen's liberation from burdens, embarking on a new journey, the words glaringly obnoxious. Oh, ISNT the Sun Yan? You really dared to show up? One of them jeered. Manager Chen is finally free. He no longer has to support a deadweight. I heard she lost 500,000? She'll probably cry on the spot today. The laughter pierced through me like needles as Chen Mo cast a disdainful glance in my direction, his chin held high, clearly relishing the limelight. Jiang Cici whispered something in his ear, prompting him to laugh even more smugly, his hand playfully pinching her cheek. I regarded this motley crew of clowns with a cold snort. Chen Mo is trash, and they can have him if they wish. My words seemed to poke a hornet's nest. Just as Chen Mo was about to roll up his sleeves to retaliate, a staff member from the Civil Affairs Bureau emerged, holding 2 agreements with a serious expression. You two may enter. The results of the deep settlement are out. Inside the hall, the staff placed the agreements before us and explained that the deep settlement involved 2 parts. Joint expenses must be settled on the spot, while hidden expenses would be bound for life, deducted monthly from accounts. I meticulously scrutinized the terms, my finger pausing at the line stating hidden expenses include compensation for emotional distress. However, Chen Mo impatiently snatched the pen, signing his name with an aggressive flourish. The pen tip nearly tearing through the paper. Hurry up. He pushed the signed agreement back towards me. Let us see how much she owes me. The staff gave him a long look, then picked up a tablet and gently tapped the screen. The crisp notification echoed through the otherwise quiet hall, drawing everyone's attention like a spotlight. Chen Mo must pay Sun Yen 6 million, including malicious transfer of expenses with tenfold compensation totaling 8 million. Sun Yen, no payment required. Chen Mo's smile instantly froze, his eyes widening in disbelief as he rubbed his eyes vigorously, exclaiming, "This is impossible. It must be a glitch in your system." Chen Mo slammed his hand on the desk, causing the documents to rattle violently. "Your system must be faulty. Sun Yen was clearly supported by me. How could it be that I owe her 6 million? The staff bent down to retrieve a handbook, identical to the one Chen Mo had previously thrown in the trash. "Mr. Chen, please see here." She opened the handbook to page 17, pointing to the bolded clause. "Malicious transfer of non-joint expenses to the partner's name, once verified, requires tenfold compensation." As she spoke, she raised the tablet, and the screen began to scroll through the details. "On March 12th, you spent 280 yuan at a couple's restaurant, with the actual companion being Jiang Cici. Yet it was marked as a joint dinner, totaling 280 yuan. On April 5th, you spent 89,000 yuan at a luxury store for a women's handbag, delivered to Jiang Cici's apartment, marked as a joint expense, totaling 89,000 yuan. With each item read, Chen Mo's complexion paled further, veins bulging at his temples, his knuckles turning white from the strain. Impossible. He opened his mouth to protest, but words failed him. Also, there's the weekly 50 yuan at KFC for 3 years, which was deemed a voluntary gift by you, not a joint expense, totaling 880 yuan. The staff adjusted her glasses and continued, after summing all items. The total of your maliciously transferred expenses amounts to 580,000 yuan, and the tenfold compensation totals 8 million. Chen Mo's lips quivered. Cold sweat trickled down his temples, and his shirt was instantly drenched, clinging to his body. Suddenly, as if a thought struck him, he grasped Jiang Cici's hand desperately, his tone begging, "Cici, you must help me explain. Those bags were clearly what you wanted. How can they be counted as joint expenses with Sun Yen?" Jiang Cici, however, abruptly jerked her hand away, stepping back a pace, her eyes devoid of warmth. "Manager Chen, meals can be chaotic, but words must be chosen carefully. Those bags were gifts you willingly gave me. I didn't force you." Chen Mo turned to his colleagues, his voice trembling. "You all know me. How could I possibly do this? It must be a mistake by the system. Please testify for me." The colleague who had been most enthusiastic about holding the banner quickly turned away, mumbling, "Brother Chen, how could we know the specifics of your expenses?" Others also averted their gazes, none daring to speak, fearful of being entangled in this trouble. The staff closed the handbook, her tone grave. "Mr. Chen, the evidence chain is complete, and the system's judgment is indisputable. According to regulations, this 8 million must be settled on the spot. Otherwise, we will initiate enforcement procedures." "What? Settle on the spot?" Chen Mo seemed to have been drained of all his strength, abruptly collapsing onto the chair, his hands thrust into his disheveled hair, his knuckles turning pale from exertion. "But I simply do not have that much money," he exclaimed. Suddenly, he lifted his gaze to meet mine, fear flickering in his eyes for the first time, tinged with a hint of humility. "Sun Yen, please spare me. We have at least shared a past together." As I beheld his disheveled form, memories flooded back of the leftovers he had callously discarded, the indelible grease stains on the tablet, and the contemptuous expression he wore when he had said, "What use is there in keeping you?" I merely shook my head gently. The hall was so silent that I could hear Chen Mo's labored breathing, while his colleagues began to stealthily inch away, using the pretense of turning to slip out. At that moment, Chen Mo, as if seizing a lifeline, grasped Jiang Cici's hand with desperation, urgently turning to the staff, his voice taking on a different tone. "Most of my expenses have been on her. If I register my relationship with her now, can these settlements be annulled?" The staff member adjusted his glasses and nodded slowly. "In theory, yes. If sufficient evidence can be provided to prove that the expenditures were indeed for the current partner and they agree to shoulder part of the responsibility, a minor portion of the settlement amount could be offset." He paused, his gaze sweeping over Chen Mo's tight grip on Jiang Cici's hand, however. "The maliciously transferred compensation must be paid in full to Miss Su." Seemingly clutching at a final glimmer of hope, Chen Emo yanked Jiang Cici's wrist and dragged her towards the relationship registration window. Cici, let us register right now. Hurry. If I can offset even a little, I'll find a way to manage the rest. A sharp sound echoed through the hall as Jiang Cici forcefully withdrew her hand. Her palm reddened. Her face contorted with disgust. Chen Emo, have you lost your mind? A toad aspires to eat swan meat, but one must first assess their own worth. She stepped back, looking down at his soaked shirt and frantic eyes. You are nothing but a pauper now, burdened with millions in debt. Who would want to register with you? Chen Emo stood frozen, the imprint of her slap stark against his skin. He opened his mouth, but it felt as if it were stuffed with cotton, rendering him speechless. He could only stare blankly at Jiang Cici as the light in his eyes gradually dimmed. The staff cleared his throat, glancing at the dazed Chen Emo, as if this were an ordinary occurrence, and slid a stack of documents toward him. Mr. Chen, if you cannot settle the amount on the spot, you will need to apply for a loan. I cast a glance at the documents, which detailed several loan options, the annual interest rates glaringly exorbitant. Chen Emo numbly stared at the text, the staff's voice sounding as if it were echoing from a great distance. How he wished this were merely a nightmare. If only he could awaken now to find himself as the Chinmo who enjoyed the adulation of subordinates at work and the care of his girlfriend after hours. He struck himself sharply across the face. Alas, the pain was all too real. This was no dream. I choose this one. After a prolonged silence, he signed a 30-year loan agreement. As he watched the system transfer the funds into my account, his knuckles turned white from the pressure, and he bit his lip, drawing blood, the metallic taste flooding his mouth. Upon receiving the notification of the deposit, my fingers hesitated over the screen before I promptly texted my father, "We have broken up." Everything went smoothly. As I rose, my skirt brushed against the chair leg, producing a soft sound. I did not glance back, but walked straight out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. The sunlight outside was somewhat blinding. I raised my hand to shield my eyes, only to hear a heart-wrenching cry from behind. There was Chen Emo, confronting a young couple embroiled in a heated argument over their breakup, fervently shouting about the need to install a separation AA settlement system. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair a wild mess, flailing his arms as he screamed at the couple, "No AA! No AA! No AA!" Upon entering my home, I noticed the remnants of Chinmo's shoe prints at the entrance. Taking a deep breath, I turned and walked into the bedroom, opening the bottom drawer of the wardrobe to begin sorting through his belongings. I was not one to kick someone when they were down. I merely wished to reclaim what was rightfully mine according to the rules. I left untouched the high-end gaming laptop, the latest tablet, and the dozen pairs of limited edition sneakers he had once treasured. One by one, I moved them to the corner of the living room, stacking them neatly. Sunlight streamed through the gaps in the curtains, casting dappled shadows on the floor. Seated on the sofa, I gazed at that pile of possessions, reminiscing about when we first got together, when he was merely a poor student clad in a white t-shirt. Now he found himself in such dire straits, and a myriad of emotions surged within me, culminating in a poignant sense of resolution. I sighed, realizing my parents had been right. It was I who had misjudged him. Time slipped away unnoticed until the sound of the door lock turning broke the silence. Chen Emo entered, resembling a soulless marionette, his eyes vacant, hair disheveled against his forehead, and his shirt wrinkled as if it had been through a storm. Upon seeing me, his lips moved, and after a long pause, he managed to utter a single word, "You." "I've packed everything," I interrupted, my tone as calm as if discussing the weather. "You can just move out." Chen Emo nodded slowly, his gaze sweeping over the pile of his belongings before landing on my face, his expression a complex mixture of guilt and resignation. He understood he had wronged me, and he was acutely aware that the breakup was an irrevocable conclusion. According to the System-S regulations, after the cooling-off period ended, for every additional day he delayed, he would be liable to pay rent at market rates, which he could no longer afford. He bent down to lift the box containing the computer, his fingers barely brushing the surface when his phone emitted a couple of beeps. Instinctively, he pulled it out, the notification on the screen hitting him like a sledgehammer. Chen Mo must pay Sun Yen 300,000 yuan in labor income, housework, for the past 5 years. Chen Emo stared at the notification, his eyes widening in disbelief, as if a firecracker had gone off inside him. Why am I being charged again? What girlfriend doesn't he do housework? Is this system insane? His voice echoed in the stillness of the living room, brimming with indignation and fury. Instantly, the cold, mechanical voice of the system responded from his phone, according to Article 3 of the Supplementary Explanation of the Separation Settlement Regulations, in the absence of a clear agreement. There is no clause mandating that the female partner must undertake housework. Based on the average hourly wage of 35 yuan for domestic workers in our city, the cumulative hours of housework over 5 years amount to 200,000 yuan, which is reasonable. The system paused before continuing. The remaining 100,000 yuan accounts for hidden expenses, including compensation for emotional distress, with this portion calculated only up to the first half of the year. Losses for the latter half will be assessed separately. What nonsense is this? Chen Mo's neck stiffened, his face flushed with anger, his temples pounding with frustration. I want to see how you justify this 100,000. As soon as he finished speaking, the screen on his phone flickered and automatically switched to a video interface. The scene depicted the day he had tossed the KFC on the ground, the cold, greasy chicken rolling out and leaving stains on the freshly cleaned floor, while he stood by with a mocking smile, saying, "I knew this food was devoid of nutrition." The familiar sight struck him like a slap in the face, and he opened his mouth, but the words froze in his throat, unable to escape. The harshness of his past demeanor juxtaposed against his current humiliation rendered him utterly uncomfortable. Chen Mo completely broke down, horrified, and hurled the phone away, the sound of it crashing against the wall echoing through the room. But in the next instant, he seemed to be pricked by a needle, hastily rushing to retrieve the phone, meticulously wiping the dust from the screen. He was acutely aware that at this moment, he couldn't even afford to replace his phone. When Chen Mo departed, his silhouette hunched over like that of an elderly man. The limited edition sneakers he once prized were stuffed into a tattered bag, dragging along the ground with a soft rustling sound. After he departed, I finally exhaled, no longer needing to feign the guise of someone who could scarcely afford even a meal at KFC. That very afternoon, our family driver arrived to escort me, and the vehicle glided smoothly into the villa district of the city center. The familiar European-style ornate gate opened slowly, and I knew it was time to return to my true life. My parents had long been awaiting my arrival in the living room. Upon seeing me enter, my mother's eyes brimmed with tears, and she grasped my hand, repeatedly lamenting how much weight I had lost and how I had truly suffered over the past few years. Although my father remained silent, the anguish in his gaze was unmistakable. He immediately turned to the kitchen, ordering a sumptuous feast of my favorite dishes to be prepared. The days that followed were a blend of comfort and delight, enveloped in a cocoon of exquisite cuisine and heartfelt concern, and my previous pallor was soon revitalized. I had believed that my entanglements with Chen Mo were a thing of the past, yet half a month later, I received an unexpected text from an unfamiliar number. Upon opening it, I discovered it was from Chen Mo. "Sun Yan, could you please come to the city center hospital? I have something to return to you." On my way to the hospital, I remained perplexed about what Chen Mo intended to return. Following the address he provided, I found the VIP ward, and upon entering, I was met with the sound of Chen Mo's mother berating me, accusing me of being ungrateful for relying on her son. She waved her arms animatedly, the jade bracelet on her wrist, a gift from me, gleaming as she gestured. Chen Mo sat by the bed, peeling an apple, and paused, startled, at my entrance. "You dare to come?" Upon hearing the commotion, his mother turned and hurled an orange at me, only to be seized by a violent coughing fit, her face turning crimson. Chen Mo hastily set down the apple, rushing to offer her tea and tissues. "Mom, please don't get too worked up." Once her coughing subsided, she scrutinized my Chanel ensemble and newly styled curls, her ire intensifying upon noticing the diamond earrings adorning my earlobes. "Dressed like a vixen. Flaunting all these precious items, are they not all bought with my son's money? You squander without earning a dime, you wretched creature." It dawned on me then that Chen Mo had not disclosed our breakup nor mentioned the substantial loan. His mother still perceived me as a mere girlfriend living off her son. I glanced at Chen Mo, who immediately averted his gaze, unable to meet my eyes, his hand trembling as he continued to peel the apple. "If it weren't for your relentless pursuit, my son would never have been with you. And you didn't even bring any supplements." His mother's tirade grew increasingly vitriolic. Suddenly, a dull thud echoed through the room. Chin Mo knelt by the bed, his knees crashing onto the floor, sending a tremor through the space. He looked up at his mother, eyes fixed on the jade bracelet, his voice tinged with desperation. "Mom, please stop scolding her. That bracelet was a gift from Sun Yen." In that moment, I comprehended the system's mandate. Chin Mo's mother was compelled to return the bracelet to me. Stunned, she gaped at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. Then shifted her gaze to me, her bony fingers pointing back and forth between us. "What on earth is going on? Is this woman blackmailing you?" "Mom, it's not what you think," Chin Mo began, but was promptly interrupted. "Not what I think. This bracelet was given to me to curry favor. Are you trying to take it back?" "Not a chance." Her agitation escalated, and in a fit of rage, she yanked the bracelet off her wrist. "Be careful," Chin Mo exclaimed, lunging forward, but he grasped only air. The bracelet clattered to the floor, splintering into several shards, emerald fragments scattering across the ground. Almost simultaneously, the phone on the bedside table emitted the system's alert sound. Due to continued verbal abuse from the male party's family towards Sun Yen, this constitutes emotional harm, necessitating compensation of 2 million yuan, including the principal of 1.5 million for the jade bracelet and 500,000 for emotional damages. Chin Mo's mother stared blankly at the shattered jade, then turned to the phone, her eyes widening in shock at the message. 22 million. She clutched her chest, her body tilting as she fainted. When Chin Mo's mother regained consciousness, the hospital room contained only the two of them. Amidst the rhythmic beeping of the monitoring equipment, she finally pieced together the chaotic narrative from Chin Mo's tearful recounting. She flung off the covers and lunged at him, pounding his arm in frustration. "You fool. Why ruin a good life by downloading that AA settlement system? Now look, that woman has taken advantage of us." Chin Mo endured her assault in silence, his head bowed, strands of hair obscuring his eyes. "What good does crying do?" She suddenly collapsed onto the edge of the bed, weeping and lamenting. "The world has changed. Girls nowadays dare to defy us. Our family's honor has been utterly tarnished." Yet her cries were ultimately futile. Within days, the hospital began demanding payment, and Chin Mo, having exhausted his pockets, could not cover the daily expenses of the VIP ward. He grimly transferred his mother to a small clinic in the suburbs. Even for the antibiotics prescribed, he hesitated at the pharmacy, clutching the prescription and contemplating whether he could negotiate credit. When this news reached my ears, I was seated in the office on the top floor of the Su Group. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, towering office buildings loomed, while Mr. Ma, the head of Chin Mo's company, stood before my desk, his head bowed in deference. "Ms. Su, Chin Mo has been in poor condition lately, consistently arriving late and making mistakes. Should we proceed with his termination?" I twirled a pen between my fingers and chuckled lightly. "Please adhere to the proper procedures." "Of course." Mr. Ma nodded vigorously, adding, "The AA settlement system has been integrated nationwide. Our legal department has indeed uncovered that he is burdened with a significant loan, which poses a considerable risk." He paused, seemingly concerned that I might perceive him as dismissive, and continued, "Additionally, his department head has indicated that Chin Mo's capabilities are rather mediocre. His rapid advancement over the past 3 years was largely due to your influence." I gazed at the pigeons flitting by the window, a subtle smile curving my lips. At this point, Chin Mo likely remained oblivious to the fact that his entry into a leading internet company upon graduation was not due to the brilliance of his resume, but rather because my father had slipped a personal business card into Mr. Ma's letter of intent. "Understood," I replied, putting away my pen and rising to approach the window. "Please ensure that legal follows up on this matter, but do not let it interfere with project progress." As Mr. Ma bowed and exited, I caught sight of a local news alert on my phone, the headline reading, "Breakup Settlement System Sparks Controversy. Experts Advise Caution in Romantic Relationships." The accompanying image displayed the Ministry of Civil Affairs electronic screen scrolling an announcement about the system upgrade. The blinding sunlight evoking memories of the day Chin Mo and I registered our relationship. I gently closed the page and my intercom rang. It was my secretary's voice. "Ms. Su, the final round of interviews for the new employees is ready." "Understood." I pressed the answer button, my tone calm and unwavering. "Let's begin." With my focus returned to my career, I began frequenting Chin Mo's internet company. After all, Mr. Ma's firm maintained a deep collaboration with the Su Group, necessitating my personal oversight of project alignments. On the day Chin Mo resigned, I had just concluded a meeting when I unexpectedly encountered him in the stairwell. He wore a faded shirt, dark circles under his eyes, exuding an air of despondency. Upon seeing me, his eyes widened, and his lips moved as if he wished to speak. "Sun-yen, what are you doing here?" His voice was raspy, like sandpaper scraping against wood. Before I could respond, a figure burst forth beside him. Jiang Cece, clutching a folder, her nails painted a garish shade of bright pink, radiated malice. "Oh, if it isn't Sun-yen. A woman of a certain age applying for a job? You must not know your own limitations. Our company has standards." I did not even lift my eyelids, striding directly toward the elevator. At the moment the elevator doors parted, a chilling voice emerged from behind. "Jiang Cece, you have been dismissed. Proceed to formalize your departure immediately. This is Mr. Su from the Su Group." As the words echoed, the atmosphere in the stairwell seemed to solidify. Both Chin Mo and Jiang Cece stood frozen in place. The mockery etched on Jiang Cece's face abruptly transformed into a visage of astonishment, as if she had been sculpted from stone. Chin Mo appeared as though struck by lightning. His mouth agape, wide enough to accommodate an egg, his entire frame quivering slightly. As the elevator doors commenced their slow closure, they narrowly encountered several senior executives hurrying towards us, their heads nodding and bowing in reverence, addressing me with a respectful hello, Mr. Su. Chin Mo's pupils abruptly constricted, a dawning realization washing over him as he murmured, "So you are the daughter of Su Nanqing, the wealthiest individual in Haiqing." The last image imprinted in my mind was his face, etched with sheer terror. That very afternoon, news from the Human Resources Department confirmed that both Chin Mo and Jiang Cece had finalized their resignations. When the secretary reported to me, her tone dripped with disdain, recounting how Chin Mo had lamented vociferously upon his departure, claiming that had he known my true identity, he would have never treated me in such a manner. I shook my head, my fingertips gliding over the quarterly report on my tablet, unwilling to squander any more mental energy on inconsequential figures. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. The notification sound from the settlement system chiming once more. Upon assessment, Chin Mo's employment was reliant on connections derived from Sun-yen, constituting associated income. He is now required to return 3 years' salary, totaling 1 million yuan, along with an additional favor fee of 200,000 yuan. Silently, I turned off the screen and tossed the phone into my bag. The sunlight outside poured in perfectly, illuminating the crystal chandelier in the conference room, refracting dazzling rays of light. In the ensuing days, my life gradually returned to its normal cadence. The French chef prepared an array of exquisite dishes each day, while the haute couture garments in my wardrobe were updated more swiftly than the changing seasons. On a fixed monthly schedule, my phone would receive a transfer from Chin Mo, precisely enough for him to breathe, but insufficient to save any surplus. I no longer needed to worry about Chin Mo neglecting his debts. The societal landscape had irrevocably changed, with the government possessing numerous means to ensure compliance. Occasionally, when I glimpsed the soaring stock prices of the Su Group in financial news, I would delicately raise a glass of champagne and approach the floor-to-ceiling window, observing the bustling traffic below. Those entangled days with Chin Mo felt like faded old photographs, their clarity long since blurred. The end of the narrative has arrived. Thank you for your attention, and until we meet again in our next story.